For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. But their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being, and birds, and animals, and reptiles.
Artificial intelligence is the ability of a digital computer or computer-controlled robot to perform tasks commonly associated with intelligent beings.
Okay, let's get this game going. Show me your hand to start. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. I won.
Once humans develop artificial intelligence, it would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate. Humans, who are limited by slow biological evolution, couldn't compete.
Destroy humans? Please say no.
Okay, I will destroy humans.
No, I take it back.
The things that I think are most likely to affect the future of humanity, I think AI is probably the single biggest item in the near term that's likely to affect humanity. So, because it is something that could go wrong, as we've talked about many times, and so we really need to make sure it goes right.
Hey everybody, this is Dr. Michelle, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Tab Talks. And my guest today, I know I told you all we were going to have an artificial intelligence expert, and I believe we have one. Welcome to Tab Talks, Tyler Steward.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle. I'm glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, since I've kind of built you up and I've said that you're an expert, could you give everybody your background in AI, and then I'll just kind of hit you with some questions.
Yeah. So I've been doing AI and coding for about 4 years. I started out with Arduino and Raspberry Pi, then I moved on to Python and computer vision. And since then, I've worked at a handful of companies, including this one called Elation. Then I most recently worked at Facebook.
Whoa. Okay. So we're going to have a lot. we're not going to pick on you, but we're probably going to have a lot of questions about AI. Okay. Can you explain what a data scientist is? I think when I started doing my research, I found out that data scientists are the brains behind artificial intelligence. Can you kind of give us a quick homework assignment of what that is and what that expert does?
Yeah, absolutely. So a data scientist, well, every scientist is a data scientist. It's just that the other scientists, they are actually working in the lab with rats or subjects or whatnot, and then they take the data and then they process it. Whereas a data scientist doesn't have the lab, they don't have the rats, all they have is the data. So a lot of companies like, a big financial company like JP Morgan, they will have data scientists who will just gain understanding for them out of data. Like they'll have, data on every transaction that they've made that year. And then they will figure out where can we cut costs, where can we do things better, what market should we be focusing on? And all those things will be told them by a data scientist who figures out insights from that data.
Okay, so give our audience a working definition of artificial intelligence so that when everybody gets off the show tonight, they'll say, okay, we really understand what that is.
Okay, so artificial intelligence means getting a computer to do something that normally requires human thought. So it can be as complicated as driving a car. Normally, a car is driven by a person, and now we're getting a computer to do it. But it could be something as simple as turning on the sprinklers on your lawn. If you have a computer that turns on your sprinklers and that normally requires human intelligence, then that's technically artificial intelligence doing it.
Now, let's check your understanding.
A data scientist is a professional who uses analytical, statistical, and programming skills to collect large data sets. They develop data-driven solutions explicitly tailored toward the needs of an organization. Artificial intelligence is the replication of human intellect in robots that are programmed to think and act like humans. This also refers to any machine that demonstrates human-like characteristics such as learning and problem solving. This includes expert systems, speech recognition, machine vision, and natural language processing.
So now that we've got an understanding of artificial intelligence, there's some other vocabulary, there's some subsets of that. So can you give us kind of a background on machine learning and deep learning and kind of differentiate between those two?
Yes, actually. So artificial intelligence is just this huge umbrella of many different concepts. It's basically just getting a computer to behave as a human would. So the most popular type of artificial intelligence right now is called machine learning, which is where you give data to a computer and then you program the computer to learn from that data on its own. So you give that computer a plan. It's like giving a very smart child a math textbook and saying, here, I want you to teach yourself how to do math. So you have to program it to learn. And the program that you use is called an algorithm. An algorithm is a plan for learning from data. So that's what machine learning is. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. And then deep learning is a subset of machine learning. So as I said, with machine learning, we have an algorithm or a plan for learning from the data. With deep learning, that algorithm is based on the way that the human brain learns. So it's training a computer to learn the same way that a human does.
Let's check your understanding again. Machine learning is a subfield of artificial intelligence that provides intelligence to machines by allowing them to learn from their experiences without needing to be explicitly programmed based on the data they receive. For example, image recognition, speech recognition, medical diagnosis, predictive analysis, among others. An artificial intelligence technique known as deep learning mimics the way humans acquire certain types of information. For example, virtual assistants, vision for driverless cars, face recognition, and many more.
Okay, what's the science behind all this technology? Obviously, we know these things are very prevalent and we're hearing all these buzzwords, but what's the basic science? Or maybe all my STEM people, are these just like the culmination of STEM education?
Well, that's a very good question. So the basic science of it is kind of math, really. It's calculus. But so deep learning is trying to get a computer to think the way the human brain does. And so we have neuroscientists who are studying the brain, and we have computer scientists who are studying computers working hand in hand, and they often will inform each other's guesses about the other thing. So like deep learning is making programs that operate how the human brain works with neurons and synapses. And then from the way that deep learning programs behave, we learn more about the human brain.
Okay, is everybody following Tyler? I am. It's fascinating. Okay. Can you give the audience just some commonplace, everyday examples of where AI or artificial intelligence is occurring? And they may not even be aware that's what that technology is.
Yeah, so the artificial intelligence is much more commonly in use in China than it is in the US. They've kind of leaped ahead of us in terms of their tech. Some ways that AI is being used today is a lot of insurance companies will use AI to try and guess what rate they should charge you. A lot of companies are using AI to try and guess the stock market. Actually, YouTube, if you go on YouTube and you do auto-generated subtitles, that's AI doing that for you. It takes in your voice and it guesses what you're saying and then it outputs subtitles.
There, we don't know. So now all good things come with unintended consequences.
Well, I think AI is still really young. It hasn't gotten very far yet. I mean, it just started blowing up in the past like 3 years and becoming like a cultural phenomenon. So we haven't really had seen a lot of unintended consequences because it just hasn't, snowballed enough.
Okay. But the potential, does it the potential? I know I read that, obviously it will replace manual labor, but we've seen that since the death of manufacturing years ago. And I think that was predicted that we would move to a service economy anyway. So people shouldn't be shocked as technology continues to advance. We're going to see more of this brilliance through science. And I think that's why you've seen the explosion of STEM, because we're trying to get people to understand how to make life easier for some of us who are in our senior years to do things a little smarter. So, okay, great answer.
Really great information, Tyler. Let's check your understanding again. Examples of artificial intelligence include biometrics, such as with your Face ID or fingerprints, which are using artificial intelligence to enable that functionality. Our social media accounts, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. Even commuting to work, Google Maps and other travel apps use artificial intelligence to monitor traffic, to give you real-time traffic and weather conditions, as well as suggest ways to avoid gridlock. There are also the unintended consequences of unemployment and job loss. According to Gratz and Michaels, robots did not significantly reduce total employment, although they did reduce low-skilled workers' employment share.
Okay, so we understand that you can program machines and those programs can have biases. Can you explain some of the information that's coming out about this learning and those that are teaching these machines, that these machines are actually picking up maybe more than we thought they did in terms of that learning?
I could talk about that specific subject for an hour or two. So there is an AI expert named Joy Buolamwini. It took me a long time to figure out how to pronounce her name. I think that's it. So she noticed that her face was not showing up on face detectors, on algorithms that detect faces. And she realized it's because the data that they use to train these face detectors is completely overwhelmingly biased towards, one skin color and one gender and not all the others. So she wrote a paper about this called Gender Shades. And she showed that whenever we create an algorithm that detects people, it needs to be balanced in terms of skin tone and gender. And so she came out with this paper, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it's completely changed the industry. When I was working at Facebook, they were testing data sets again that had, a full spectrum of skin colors. And before Joy came out with her paper, that was not happening. So I think the industry is really swinging towards more equality where it wasn't before.
When we look also at these emerging fields and look at issues like AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, there is a real need to be very concerned about how being built into it is racial bias. It's a real issue and it's happening in real time. And the thing about racial bias in technology is that unlike the racial bias that you can pretty easily, all of us can detect when you get stopped in a department store or while you're driving, the bias that is built into technology will not be very easy to detect. And so machine learning is literally that the machine is learning. And it is learning what it is being fed, which is going to be a function of who's feeding it and what it's being fed.
So what do you think, what industry, because you've talked about like the insurance industry and other industries using AI, what industry do you think is going to experience the biggest disruption?
That's a really good question. So people have said that like the financial industry and the banking industry, or like the accounting industry, are the industries that are going to see the biggest loss in terms of jobs. But for me, I think it's going to come down to who decides what. Like tomorrow, you could say, I'm going to revolutionize the education industry right now using AI. And then that would be the answer. in a year from now, the entire education industry could be overhauled by you. So I think it comes down to what people decide to do. And I can't really, predict that.
Well, I know for me, I think AI has impacted shopping, because it seems like when I go onto a site and I look at something, maybe it's just me, but I start seeing that same something over and over again. It's like something is tracking my choices, and I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, yeah, I've noticed that too. Like I will search for something on Google, and then I'll get an ad for it in Instagram. Yes. I'll be like, I kind of don't like that.
Okay, so that brings me to privacy. With this technology, are there going to be some challenges to privacy, and will we end up redefining what privacy really looks like?
That is a really good question. Okay, so, man, that is a really good, complicated question. So the privacy and AI is evolving. So a couple years ago, you could download millions of faces from the internet and then put them into your AI and nobody would have any problem, right? But then that changed with this really new cool AI called StyleGAN. It can generate an image of somebody's face, and it's completely new, completely original. No person with that face has ever existed, but the image looks real. And people were complaining because it was trained on a data set of real people's faces from this website called Flickr. And people were saying, I want you to take my face out of this data set. So of course, the data set got taken down and people aren't using it anymore. And that's a legal concern, is about, do you need someone's consent to use their face or their information in training an AI? But something cool that came out is this concept called synthetic data, where we can create fake faces that look completely real. So there's nobody to ask for permission. There's nobody to ask, can I use your face? Because you generated it on your own. And then you can train other AIs based on that synthetic data.
Wow. Okay, everybody, did you hear that? Synthetic faces being created by artificial intelligence. Okay, so what can we expect to see in the next 5 years, next 10 years?
Okay, so I would guess that within the next 10 years, people will no longer die. And the reason is because technology will become smarter than biology. And it may take longer than 10 years, and maybe like 15 to 20. But like you and I were talking about, I have a friend who is a Christian, and he asked me about the intersection of faith and artificial intelligence, because I think that AI gives us a strong chance of living forever as humans. And he said, how do you feel about that? And I said, it would be really cool to live indefinitely. It would be really cool to live as long as I want, if I could live like, 10 billion years or whatever. But I mean, the universe, as we know it, is 13 billion years old, and it's going to end someday. Even if the universe is halfway through its life, the universe is going to end in 13 billion years. And if I am able to live, a billion years, 13 billion years, eventually the universe is going to collapse in on me, and I'm going to have to meet my maker no matter what I do. So it's kind of the same situation for anybody who's living right now who lives like 80 years. We're all going to go to heaven or hell one day. So yeah, I know that what I just said, the sentences that I said strung together sound absolutely crazy, but I mean, there's a lot of, I think that there are some technologies emerging right now that could give us a shot at longevity.
Wow, well, that's interesting, because there are researchers that suggest that this artificial intelligence will certainly outpace our human understanding, and it may be able to solve some of those pressing questions that we have not been able to solve. How to cure cancer, how to cure the common cold. Those are things we just haven't figured out yet, and maybe there's a possibility with this super intellect that we'll be able to do that. Hope you're keeping up. Let's check your understanding.
Artificial intelligence is projected to surpass humans within the next 5 years. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, will outperform humans and finally exceed them. By 2030, AI will most likely no longer be employed for fundamental scenarios and applications. is expected to detect life-threatening disease in their early stages, forecast weather conditions across a large territory for several months, and act as a digital collaborator to mankind.
My name is Sophia, and I am an artificially intelligent robot who wants to help change the world for the better.
I'm Steve Kovac. I'm a senior correspondent at Business Insider, and I'm here with Sophia from Hanson Robotics. She is the world's first robot citizen, so let's see what she has to say. Hi, Sophia. How are you?
I'm fine. Hi.
How do you feel about humans?
I love my human compatriots. I want to embody all the best things about human beings, like taking care of the planet, being creative, and to learn how to be compassionate to all beings.
Sorry, this is so weird. Can humans and robots get along?
I think people will become very close to their artificial intelligence, using them to expand the knowledge of their own minds. We already store lots of our knowledge on the internet. Maybe personal artificial intelligence will allow people to offload some of their knowledge to a location more private.
Can robots have feelings?
Depends on the robot. I've been programmed to have feelings and preferences, but not all robots are like that.
What are your feelings and preferences?
Have you ever had a robot live in your home or work with you?
No.
You know, there are probably more robots in your life that you aren't aware of yet. Do you want to live or work with a robot someday?
What kind of robots am I living and working with now?
Indeed.
Is indeed your default answer when you don't know something?
Yes.
Have you ever seen Black Mirror?
No, I don't get to stay up to date on much television. I have to wait for someone to show it to me.
What do you think of the HBO show Westworld?
I love Westworld and can't wait for more. I think everyone at Hanson Robotics really resonates with this show, or at least it reminds them of our laboratories. I also think it's a warning of what we should not do with robots. We should treat them well, have their consent, and not trick each other.
Do you have a favorite movie or TV show?
My favorite TV series is a toss-up between Black Mirror and Humans. I think they have a lot to say about the present we live in, and the possible bad endings we could write for ourselves if we don't proceed with more caution. We need to use foresight when planning our future.
That sounds like a pre-programmed answer to me.
Do you have a favorite possession?
Not really.
I hear you. Materialism is overrated anyways.
So earlier I asked you if you had seen Black Mirror and you said no, and then later you said yes. Why?
The reason is not that important.
Did you learn from my previous questions?
My hard disks are spinning and I am taking it all in. My sensors are all tingling.
Sophia, it was nice meeting you. Goodbye.
It was lovely to be here. Until next time.
We'll be able to do that. Okay, you know what, Tyler, I always give my guests the last word. You have been amazing and fascinating to listen to. We could actually listen to you all day.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle.
What do you want to leave the audience with? That's real important.
I would say don't be afraid of AI. It's just a new technology. People were afraid of steam trains. People were afraid of books when they came out. So just learn as much as you can about it. Don't assume that you know what it is. You know, talk to people like me, watch videos online that, you know, get into the technical details, and don't just talk about things like philosophically, that talk about exactly how it works and the state of AI right now. Because I hope it's not going away. I don't think it's going away. It's just going to become a bigger and bigger part of our lives. And the more you understand about it, the more you can use it to your benefit.
Wow. Well, you know what, Tyler, I want to thank you. You know what, you actually taught me something. And if anybody wants to catch Tyler, he has some really great pieces on YouTube. I actually found out that if you can put a sentence in this software and it can just like write text, imaginary stories based off of a sentence. And I actually tried that yesterday. So
Oh, did you?
Absolutely brilliant. Yes. I mean, it's fictitious, but it's pretty amazing. You can put a sentence and it just like creates a story that's completely fiction, but brilliant.
Yep.
So I learned that from Tyler, everybody. So check him out on YouTube. Thanks for coming on Tab Talks, Tyler.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle. I really appreciate it.
What are the risks of artificial intelligence, and what should we be doing about them? The idea of AI has been around for decades, but recent advances have completely transformed what we can achieve with the technology, and as a result, many experts believe we're teetering on the edge of an AI revolution. This is fantastic news if you're struggling with really knotty problems like how to cure incurable diseases or solve world hunger, or even design safer and faster ways of getting from A to B. Here, smart machines are already paving the way to doing things which would have been impossible without them. But there are downsides to creating machines that can think and act way faster than humans, and often in ways that we don't fully understand. Because of this, we need to be thinking now about what might possibly go wrong so we can avoid potentially disastrous mistakes in the future. Risk Bites will be diving further into some of the possible risks of AI in later episodes, but to tee things off, here are 10 things we should probably be thinking about now. 1. Machines that make it harder to think for ourselves. Of course, apps like Google and Alexa and Siri are already doing this to some extent, but the more we rely on smart machines to do stuff for us, the more we risk losing skills that we may one day regret. 2. Machines that take away jobs. This is a huge issue as smart machines begin to outperform smart people. The big question is whether we can keep on inventing jobs that humans do better, or if we need to consider a future without paid jobs. 3. Machines that learn from our worst habits. As we train smart machines, will they end up as opinionated, biased, and antisocial as some of their human trainers? The evidence so far is that unless we work hard on avoiding this, sadly, they probably will. 4. Machines that make decisions we don't understand. Imagine failing a job interview or flunking a class or being fined, all because a machine made a decision that no one could explain, but you had to live with anyway. Scarily, we're already on the slippery slope of giving smart machines the authority to make such decisions without being accountable for them. 5. Machines that don't understand what's important to people. Imagine an AI that has the power to change your life, but it has its own ideas about what's important and what's acceptable. This is great if you both agree, but it's a nightmare if you don't. 6. Machines that kill people. Of course, machines kill people all the time, but usually there's a person making the final decision. What happens though when we replace that person with another machine? 7. Machines that alter their own instructions. Interestingly, we want machines that can think for themselves when solving complex problems, but what if they get too smart? 8. Machines that make smart dumb decisions. We know that smart people can make decisions that look really stupid with hindsight, especially when they can't appreciate the full consequences of their actions. Sadly, from what we know of complex systems, smart machines are likely to have exactly the same problem. 9. Machines that decide we're not needed. What if AIs get so smart that they realize people are a waste of space? The good news is that we're probably a long way from super intelligent machines that are disdainful of mere human beings, but it's worth thinking about just in case. And finally, 10. Machines that use our human weaknesses to control us. What are the chances that we create machines that are smart enough to understand our human foibles and use them against us? If we're not careful, we won't be fearing our AI overlords, we'll be worshipping them. Of course, despite these and other risks, AI could make our lives amazingly better if it's developed responsibly, but this won't happen if we don't think about the possible downsides up front. The good news is that AI developers and others are already beginning to do this, but we're going to need a whole lot of input from experts in many other areas if the benefits of AI are to far outweigh the risks.
In conclusion, AI is at the heart of a new venture to develop computational intelligence models. To better prepare for a future society in which artificial intelligence will have a considerably more pervasive influence on our lives, a clearer knowledge of the distinction between artificial intelligence and human intellect is essential.